Welcome to the Balanced Body Podcast, where Sherri Griggs, owner of Balanced Body Health and Wellness in Omaha, talks to us about health, wellness, and balancing hormones. Hello and welcome to Sherri Griggs' podcast, Balanced Body Health and Wellness. And we're here with Sherri Griggs, hormone specialist extraordinaire, and we are done talking about the specifics on different hormones in our bodies, which I highly recommend if you haven't gone back and listened to the in-depths on what does cortisol do and your thyroid and testosterone and so on for all their hormones. We look at it like a car. We talk about it as like how to get in balance and some of the specifics and how you know. Now we're getting into, I don't know if I should say the exciting bit, but the disease processes is what you had said. And I just need to know more. So Sherri Griggs, hello.
Hello. How are you doing, John?
Great. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for asking.
Good.
Now, I find this fascinating that this, how your hormone, this is great. We talked about all the different hormones, how it makes you feel when they're out of whack, everything. And now we're getting into some of the things that people deal with day to day when they find that they have one of these things. So first off, what really is a disease process?
Right. Well, it's something in your body. If you think of dis-ease, right? So something is just off balance. Something isn't working properly in your body. So we say that you have a particular disease. And what we'll be doing is we'll be talking about hormone-driven, right? Hormone-driven diseases, things that are wrong with us because our hormones are not balanced, or we are lacking a hormone, or we have too much of a hormone. What are the diseases and the things that can happen to our body when that takes place?
I see. In particular, what ties it to your hormones, what you're looking for, right? You had said that you test for these things specifically, not just on the hormone basis and what's out of whack, but when you kind of find that you've got a certain disease. I love how you said this earlier. You may not need to live with it. Right?
Right. Well, or when we were talking about the particular one we're going to discuss today, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, I talked about how that's an autoimmune disease. Okay.
Oh, right.
Right. It's autoimmune, and that you don't necessarily have to get one just because you have the genetics for it.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's dive in.
Well, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. What is this? Well, let's think about, I say it's an autoimmune disease, but then you said we're talking about hormones. It's a disease process where your body attacks your own thyroid gland. That's what autoimmunity is.
I see. Yes. I've heard that before, but this is great that we're recouping.
Right? So we'll just do a high level look at autoimmunity just real quickly. So that is where your body makes antibodies against itself, right? So it's autoimmunity. So your body is making antibodies against itself or something in your body. So for Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it's antibodies that fight or kill your thyroid. When we talk about diabetes, it will be antibodies that kill the beta cells of your pancreas. But not all hormone diseases are related to autoimmunity. But Hashimoto's thyroiditis is, and symptoms are how people normally find out they have it.
Okay, so and this makes a lot of sense because you had said this when we were talking about the different hormones. A lot of times you don't know that your hormone, one specific hormone is low or rocking a little too hard or too fast. You just know that you don't feel right. So I guess what in Hashimoto's is sort of one of the few different ways that you can sort of flag it. It's like, you got to check for this because you're feeling this, this, and this.
Well, it's not that easy, John. If only it was.
No.
Which is why it's balancing, right?
Yeah.
When we talked about hormones and we gave the analogy about the car, it all needs to be in balance. So here are some symptoms of a low thyroid, okay? Meaning hypo, not enough thyroid. Now, I went to look for some statistics and didn't necessarily find any, like how often, what are the percentages of people that have a low thyroid? Is it because it's Hashimoto's thyroiditis? Now, we know if someone has a low thyroid because they had another thyroid disease where their thyroid was hyperactive and it had to be shut down. They're now hypo because they don't make any thyroid hormone. But the symptoms are low thyroid and you feel tired. Because remember, we said the thyroid, like the transmission, what gear are you in, or how you're running fast or running slow? You'll run slow. You're hypo. So you feel tired. You'll all of a sudden gain weight for no reason. Just gain weight. Constipation can be a symptom of a low thyroid. Think about it, because it's running your metabolism. So think your metabolism is slowed down. So you gain weight. You're tired. You get constipated. You're cold. You'll find you'll have an increased sensitivity to cold.
Okay.
Dry skin, depression, you're going to have muscle aches. So these are all symptoms that can be other things as well.
Absolutely. Well, that's what we had talked about. Now I'm jogging back to when we talked about thyroid and how sometimes, these same symptoms are across multiple hormones for one. So even as a hormone specialist, you're trying to figure out which hormone is really the player and where the root cause is, because that's what you want to get at is the root cause. Fix that.
Exactly. Check all the hormones, right? Yeah. I check all of them. I don't say, wow, you have dry skin. That's a symptom of low estrogen and low thyroid. We're just going to check those two.
Yeah.
Right? So when you start to have a lot of those symptoms all together, then medical practitioners tend to say, wow, those are all symptoms of a low thyroid. We better check your thyroid level. Okay. And they will then check your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone. If you've been listening to us, some of this will start to sound familiar. We talked about this. Your thyroid stimulating hormone, that's the hormone that the pituitary spits out and tells the thyroid, make some hormone, make some thyroid hormone, Mr. Thyroid or Mrs. Thyroid, right?
Yeah.
So the pituitary is telling it what to do. But if it's sick, if it's being attacked, if it's being killed, it's not going to make enough of that hormone. It's not going to make enough of the two main hormones are the T3 thyroid hormone and the T4 thyroid hormone. Those are your two main thyroid hormones. There are others, but those are the two main. And those are the two we can test for. If the thyroid does not make enough of those hormones, then the pituitary spits even more of that stimulating hormone out, saying, come on, I need you to make more. The body needs you to make more. So if they are to the point, and I will say this, that they are so ill that their TSH is high, they are well into that disease process. This isn't something that just started yesterday. This is something that's been going on for a period of time. And it could be days, weeks, months. It's even possible years, depending on their lifestyle habits. If they have anti-inflammatory lifestyle habits, remember it's an autoimmune disease and inflammation is part of autoimmunity, but say they are somebody that's lives an anti-inflammatory lifestyle without a lot of toxicity, without a lot of stress, it could take years before their thyroid finally gets sick enough or enough of it is killed that it doesn't make enough of the hormone.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
And this is just my not knowing, but when you said if you live an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, for some reason I went to somebody's taking like an ice bath every day. Like people do ice baths lately. It's like a thing. I mean, so you could be sort of self-treating the symptoms and then all of a sudden it just gets worse, is what you're saying.
Not really self-treating the symptoms. You wouldn't be treating the symptoms, but you would be self-treating the cause.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right? So if you are lowering the inflammation and lowering the amount of toxin and lowering the amount of stress, helping your mitochondria heal, then you're slowing down that process. Mm-hmm. You're slowing down the process of where the body is killing the thyroid.
I see. That's crazy.
And, maybe I should have done this in the very beginning, but when I want to give you a real quick visual about autoimmunity. When I keep saying the thyroid is sick or the body is killing it, I had read one time where somebody explained it like this, and it was a wonderful explanation. So we have killer T cells. That's part of our immune system. And then we also have our controlling T cells. Think of it like an army. So your killer T cells are the soldiers, and your regulating T cells, those are the generals that tell the soldiers when to fight, where to fight, when to back away. What happens of the T cells, you don't have enough generals. You have a huge army and not enough generals. And so the army just runs amok. It's just out there killing things. That's what autoimmunity is.
That is a really great way to explain it. I have a very specific visual now.
Yes, that is autoimmunity. And many people think of it as actually being immunocompromised, meaning they don't have enough of an immune system. And I have to say, no, actually you have a too good of an immune system. It's not that it's low, it's just too high. There's nothing regulating it, telling it to stop or not, or telling it what direction to go. So you have these antibodies that are out there, these soldiers that are out there killing your thyroid. Mm-hmm. There are things that we can do that can slow that down, such as anti-inflammatory things that you can do, reduce stress, stuff like that. Let's say we've got we have a normal TSH, a normal thyroid stimulating hormone, but we still have all these symptoms. That is possible. That can happen. This is frequently where someone will go to the doctor and they'll have all the symptoms, and the doctor will run the TSH and they'll say, there's nothing wrong with your thyroid, you're fine. Checked all your blood work, you're fine. But you're not fine. You don't feel good. You're tired, right? Your hair's falling out, you're gaining weight, you're constipated, you're cold all the time, and you're told that nothing is wrong.
Is this a part of the, I don't want to say misinformation about Hashimoto's, but isn't there a lack of awareness with this one too, where people kind of are unsure if it's something that they could get? I don't know how to explain what I'm thinking, but it seems like, anytime I've heard Hashimoto's before you and I are talking about it today, it just seems there's either a lack of awareness or there's is that just due to the root cause of people not being aware of hormones and the impact that they have on their day-to-day life, you think? Or is that...
In some cases, it is also a lack of training in the medical field, because we have actually moved forward a little bit in the thyroid world, and now we will check a T4 thyroid hormone. That's the hormone that the thyroid gland makes the most of. It can make some of the T3 hormone also, but mostly it makes the T4 thyroid hormone. What then happens is our body converts that T4 hormone into a T3 hormone, and that is what our cells use for energy. That is what our mitochondria uses for energy, is the T3 hormone. There's also something called a reverse T3 hormone, and it can compete with the receptor site on the cell with the T3 hormone that we need for energy. So, backing up a little bit.
Yes.
The thyroid stimulating hormone comes around and says, thyroid, make some free T4 or some T4 thyroid. And it does. And traditional medicine measures that T4 and says your T4 is fine. Your thyroid is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The TSH is telling it to make the T4. It's making the T4. Everything's fine. But are we converting it? Are we turning it into that T3 thyroid hormone that we need for energy? We can check that, but most of the time that is not checked.
Okay.
We are just checking, like I said, recently, if you have a more forward-thinking practitioner, they're checking the T4, but that's not enough. That's still not enough. And they're also looking at it in the normal range.
Right.
Right? But we've talked about this, what's optimal. There's normal and there's optimal. So now you start to get into the difference between your traditional practitioner who says, here are the lab ranges that the lab gave me and you're in the lab range, you're fine. And your functional or your root cause practitioner who says, but you don't feel fine. You have all the symptoms of a low thyroid, and your level is normal, but it's on the low end of normal. Mm-hmm. We can move that dial to the high end of normal, and you might feel better, but you're still normal. Mm-hmm. Right? Medicine, as you may have heard me call it before, sick medicine, trains everybody in medical school. We don't do anything until they're sick. Mm-hmm. So if you're in that range, even if you're on the low end, traditional medicine, there are some people there, again, have done some additional training, will not treat it. They'll say you're in the normal range, you're not sick. We have to wait till you're sick. So we'll just check it, maybe we don't want to check it again because they've decided you don't have a thyroid problem.
Yeah, there's not like a doctor picking up the phone to call you to say, hey, come on in, let's check your T3, T4.
Correct. Right? How you feeling? Well, I'm still tired. Well, you're getting old. Right?
Yeah.
Your blood work's fine. It's just part of getting older. Eat better and exercise. You'll feel better. It's not always true. So where does Hashimoto's come into all this? Mm-hmm. We need to check, which I always do, in addition to those numbers I've told you so far, thyroid antibodies. Do you have thyroid antibodies? So there's one called TPO, thyroid peroxidase, and the other thyroglobulin antibodies. If you have one of those, you have Hashimoto's.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I check every patient that comes in for thyroid antibodies. I have found more than one person, and it would be interesting to know what the statistics are, but I would say 25% at this point, maybe a little less, that have Hashimoto's thyroiditis without any symptoms yet.
Oh my gosh.
So we have found antibodies early on. That means their body is just starting to attack the thyroid. Mm-hmm. Their levels are still,
You haven't felt it yet. You haven't felt the attack just yet.
There's not enough of the gland that's been damaged yet.
Yeah.
That you still make enough. So what we need to do is we need to support that thyroid gland, and we need to give it the nutrients it needs. And we need to try to cut down that inflammation. We want to try to slow those killer cells down from attacking the thyroid. One of the things that so it used to be, and I'll say used to be, and a lot of this is very new, that anytime anyone had Hashimoto's or a thyroid disease, we told them they needed to be gluten-free. They needed to not eat gluten.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense, because that's what I was wondering where that connection came from, because anytime I heard Hashimoto's, I immediately thought, well, they can't have bread.
Right. But why?
I don't know.
Well, a lot of people with autoimmune disease have what we call gastric permeability, or the old school term, leaky gut.
I've heard of that.
We won't get into the details about what that is in this podcast, but very simply stated, the food that you eat can get through your gut. It leaks, right? So food particles, nutrients are not being absorbed as they should be, and they are able to get through the lining of the small intestine. Food particles were not meant to be in our body. They're meant to stay in our GI tract, where we break them down, take the nutrients out of them, and then excrete them. Okay, they're not meant to be in our body. What happens is the gluten molecule is very similar to the thyroid gland. Mm. So when that molecule gets into your body, it doesn't belong there, just like anything that gets into your body that doesn't belong there, a virus, a bacteria, we make antibodies, right? We need to kill it. Mm-hmm. We need to stop it. It doesn't belong there. We need to protect ourselves. So now we make these antibodies because of the gluten molecule, and they are the same antibodies that kill the thyroid. Hmm. So they go and they look for, where's this molecule? We got to kill it. They find the thyroid. Oh, here it is. And they kill the thyroid.
They're attacking the wrong one.
Yep, they attack the thyroid. So that is why you have heard that people with Hashimoto shouldn't eat bread. Because if you are eating gluten, then that means you are forcing your body to make more antibodies. The more antibodies you make, the quicker it kills your thyroid. The more soldiers you have, right, the quicker you can take over the enemy.
Yeah.
So that is why they need to be gluten-free. The latest teaching out there is that anybody who's autoimmune should be gluten-free, which only makes sense because autoimmunity, you have to have three things. You have to have the genetics for it. So think of it like a weak link in a chain. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that because grandma has rheumatoid arthritis or mom has psoriasis, that that's what I'll have. So autoimmune diseases aren't necessarily passed down by the disease. It's passed down by autoimmunity. So that means you have a weak link. So if you've got a weak link and you know you have autoimmunity, then your risk of getting Hashimoto's, if you are eating gluten, is very, very high. Because eventually your body may decide to make antibodies to that particular molecule.
Man, all that's happening. And in my head, I'm thinking that's all happening while I'm asleep. So I can do nothing to control it.
Correct.
I'm asleep at the wheel.
Right? I mean, prevention. So I read this really great book, The Autoimmune Fix. Is it Tom Bryan? What was Tom's name? In fact, I've looked for it and I've given it, I have loaned it out. And it was a great book I read. He was the one, and I'll give him credit about the soldiers and the weak link. And, he has said that if you know you have autoimmunity in your family and you don't want to get an autoimmune disease, you need to change your lifestyle quick. You need to keep toxins out of your life at all cost.
Tom O'Brien?
Tom O'Brien. There you go. Thank you. I was close when I was like, Tom O'Brien. It's a great read. It's an easy read. It's an interesting read. It's been out a long time, but it's a really good book. And he talks about that. He talks about patients that he warned, you're at risk for this, and they didn't listen to him, and then they came back to him later and said, I need you to fix this. And he said, it's too late. You haven't, right? Your body's made the antibodies. I wanted to prevent it, but now that it's happened, I can't help
prevention.
You.
Yeah.
Autoimmunity is about prevention. So it's about wanting to keep your disease from getting worse. Once you've got it where you're at, from worsening and healing what you've damaged and preventing from getting another autoimmune disease.
So really, step one of that, learn about, autoimmune disease, I'm sure, but really it's to spend some time with you to get checked and see where your hormones are right now. And this makes so much sense why you said this earlier, because like you said that you've caught this before people really knew that it was an issue.
Yes.
It was gearing up.
Yep. I have a patient right now, and I said, you have thyroid antibodies. Now, mainly this affects women. Women in ages 30 to 50, mainly women, but it can affect men, rarely men, but it can, and it's a gentleman. And I said, this is what it means. And he said, I'm not ready yet. No, I'm not ready to go gluten-free. So it's a discussion. I'm letting him come to terms with it, but it's a discussion at some point we need to have about what it means. And it's not simple, well, once I kill my thyroid, I'll just take a pill. I'll just do thyroid replacement. We can do it, but it's still never as good as your natural.
Sure.
Right? It can be a natural thyroid replacement, but it's still not your natural thyroid hormone.
Oh, and that sounds awful. Killing your thyroid. Even if you don't know what a thyroid is, which shame on you if you're listening up to this point and you haven't listened to our thyroid talk. But that transmission in our body is so important. So.
Yes. Yeah. And then treating it, right? So what do we do? So now we know you have the antibodies, but maybe your thyroid is still working well. Maybe you're still optimal. So again, that goes back to supporting the thyroid with supplementation, making sure it has what it needs. One of the things the thyroid really needs is iodine. And we as a society used to get iodine in our salt. iodized salt. Why do we have iodized salt? Because they found out that all these people were having thyroid issues because they didn't have enough iodine. So now they put iodine in our salt to help prevent it. But everyone switched to sea salt, pink Himalayan salt. No more iodine. So are you getting enough iodine to support your thyroid?
True. Yeah. Yeah, if you're using, did they put iodine in like kosher salt? Because that's my preferred salt choice.
Yeah, kosher salt, sea salt, Himalayan, some of those, no, they're all natural, right? They don't have anything added to them, so they don't have the iodine in them. Iodine is one that can really be a problem if we don't have enough of it. Mm-hmm. And our thyroid is one of the things that can be affected. Our thyroid needs selenium. It needs these nutrients, vitamins A, or vitamin A, the B vitamins. You hear about vitamin D all the time. But when you think about the minerals that the thyroid needs, the iodine, the selenium, the zinc, magnesium, those are all nutrients that our thyroid needs. So we make sure that if somebody has the antibodies, that we are supporting that thyroid with those nutrients so it doesn't struggle. So we want to feed it to keep it strong so that it can fight off the antibodies. Think of it more or less that way. And then we want to stop making them. So let's get rid of some gluten, right? Let's get that gluten out of there. We want to bring that inflammation down. So let's stay away from inflammatory foods, things that inflame our body.
Those are the best foods, though. As soon as you say that, I feel like I just want a baguette.
Right? With lots of sugar, like some jam or something, sugar, the toxic sugar that causes lots of inflammation in the body. Which is why, as we know, sugar feeds cancer, inflammation. Yeah. So we want to feed it. We want to protect it. We want to do what we can for our thyroid. We want to, if you get that chance, if somebody could tell you, hey, you have the marker for this particular kind of cancer, which will kill you. But if you do X, Y, and Z, you won't get it. Why wouldn't you?
That is a powerful question. It almost makes me think like, a part of the onboarding quiz, there should be a question about, would you rather go back and talk to your younger self with what you know today, or have your older self come back and talk to you now? To figure out at what stage somebody's at for, either learning a lesson or teaching a lesson.
Right? Well, and what's so bad, John, is, so I myself have Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, and had I had my medical practitioners, had they had the knowledge about autoimmunity, we could have prevented it. We could have prevented it. I already had 2 autoimmune diseases. I didn't do research myself at that time. But it could have been. And then when I was first diagnosed with the low thyroid, I still didn't know anything about Hashimoto's, and neither did my provider. My medical provider, my doctor, never said, well, you have a low thyroid. In fact, the doctor said, oh, you women, you get old and gain weight, you all just think you have a thyroid issue.
Oh my gosh.
That's what he said to me.
Just discounting you right out of the gate with that.
And when I came back for my results, he apologized.
Rightfully
because
so.
I did have a low thyroid. I did have thyroid disease. But they didn't check the antibodies to say, this is the thyroid disease you have. This is what you can do to prevent it from getting worse. This is, right? They gave me a medication and sent me out the door. And that's where I did the research and started learning about it.
Man, this is tough, but it makes so much sense now that we've talked through it. So kind of, we did kind of address some of this at the beginning, but like, at what stage should somebody be proactive about calling you to then start talking and checking? I mean, when is the best time to do that?
Well, since children can get Hashimoto's, it's rare. It's something that generally hits us older in life, or later on in life as we get older. So if somebody is feeling tired, hair loss, sensitivity to cold, constipation, dry skin, I've had people come in that have all those symptoms, and their doctor told them their thyroid was fine. It was, but it wasn't optimal. So another example, again, myself. Before I learned all the things I learned, I went into my provider and I'm looking at some old lab work. And every time I would go in, she'd tell me I'm fine. I said, but I'm not fine. I'm really tired and I'm losing my hair and my skin is dry. And she said, but you're fine. Your numbers are fine. Well, my T3, my free T3 was 2.4. The lab, different labs have different values, but in general, the lab value will tell you 2 to 4.5 or 4 is normal. 2 to 4 is normal. I was 2.4. I was fine. What happened as I started learning, and even before I had my degree, I met someone at a convention, and they taught me about a different type of thyroid replacement medication, at which I went back to her and I said, you have been giving me a thyroid medication with gluten in it. You know I'm gluten-free, and this whole time you've been giving me gluten. I want you to change me to this new medication. She's wonderful. She changed me, and I felt better.
Oh, my gosh.
I felt better. The skin was better. My energy was better. The hair was better. Everything. I was like, oh, my gosh. Well, then I started looking at my free T3. My free T3 went from 2.4 to 3.7. Optimal is 3.5 to 5. That's optimal. I was still in the normal range.
But you were in the better position for you and how you felt.
I was in the optimal range. Optimal. So I have patients all the time that'll come in with symptoms, and they'll be sitting there with a 3.2 on their T3, and I will give them thyroid replacement. And then I will say, your primary care wouldn't like this at all. I'll leave that up to you, whether you tell them. But when they do your lab work's going to come out perfect.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so great. And they're going to
say, why are you feeling better? And then, you'll tell them, and they may not be happy about it. They may say there was absolutely no reason whatsoever for you to be put on that medication. Your lab results were normal. And at that point, that's where you advocate for yourself and you say, my lab results are still normal. They're just at a different level of normal. And I feel better now. Don't you want me to feel better?
That could be scary, though, to have to stand up to yourself against the doctor in a room.
Well, I give everybody what they need to do that. Yeah. And I give them the option, right? I tell them they may not like this. They may have an absolute fit that I'm putting you on this because your lab results were in the normal range. They will still be in the normal range. They'll still be normal. They'll just be at the other end. And what is the harm in that? You're still in the normal range. So you're not being harmed. In fact, your life is better. Your quality of life is improved.
Man. And I think everybody's looking for that.
Right? They are. And, the other side of that is then people go out there and they start experimenting with supplements. And there are supplements out there with animal thyroid gland in it, glandular thyroid. And people start, treating themselves, and there is a risk of too much.
Well, and that's probably, I would venture a guess that that's most likely what doctors probably see more of is somebody self-diagnosing and then prescribing.
Right.
You can find all sorts of stuff out there if you really look hard. Well,
and it's interesting because somebody said to me once, well, it's natural, so it's safe. That's not necessarily true. If you thyroid, get yourself too much thyroid, you can cause heart problems. You can cause heart irregularities and cause some issues with your heart. So, it's best not to do that. It's best to see somebody like myself that is an expert, that understands this, that can watch it and can manage it for you, than to go purchase something over the counter that you're playing roulette with, especially if you have autoimmune.
Yeah. Say you even as simple as the one prescription that you had that was helping even out your thyroid, but then it had gluten in it. I mean, that's terrible.
Yeah. And that was just a lack of education, not mainstream education. She had her mainstream education. It was lack of the functional side of the education to know that the gluten molecule and the thyroid and how that all works together.
Which is exactly why when you schedule a 15-minute call on balancedbodymedical.com with Sherri, you'll be talking to the hormone expert extraordinaire.
That is correct.
So that's what we should do, especially if you started looking up things on Google or asking AI, and then it starts spitting out that scary word, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. You know, Sherri, give her a call. Talk through it. Figure out where you're at. Check your levels. Because you may be in that normal range, but let's get you optimal, right?
That's right. Right. Let's get you optimal. Let's get you feeling good. And let's make sure that there aren't any other hormones that are out of balance.
Absolutely. So Hashimoto's down. What do we want to talk about next week?
Ooh, I think we were thinking diabetes.
Diabetes.
Yeah.
Do you want to break them up, or do we want to do one big one, you think?
Well, I think we should do one big one.
Okay.
Because there is so much confusion about type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, and type 2 diabetes up to 25 to 30% of the time is, people are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes when really they have type 1.
Oh my gosh.
So we want to keep those together so that the people listening, so that you guys out there listening know, and you hear it all in one podcast. And if we have people that want to learn more, know more, want us to break it down, then we can do that at a later date.
All right. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll dive into diabetes, type 1, type 2 next week. Thank you, Sherri. I appreciate you.
Thanks, John.
This has been the Balanced Body Medical Podcast with Sherri Griggs, owner of Balanced Body Health and Wellness. If you're looking to find Sherri, go ahead and look for the website, balancedbodymedical.com. If you're looking for the business and you want to find Sherri at her office, you can find her at
10815 Elm Street in Rockbrook Plaza. Thank you.